Morning, everyone. We're going to start a new series, and it's going to be about heaven. Our last series was kind of a downer, right? We talked about the book of Ecclesiastes, and we were talking about a lot of negative things, it seems like. So I thought, hey, it would be nice. It's kind of like if Ecclesiastes, remember the phrase that we used a lot in Ecclesiastes? It was under the sun, under the sun, under the sun. So I thought, hey, we talked about a lot of the stuff under the sun. What if we start thinking about the stuff above the sun and start getting more of a positive view of what we are all waiting for, okay? And where all of us, I think, wants to go to, and where we are going to be. So we're going to do a new series about heaven. This is the Bible text that we're going to be focusing on today. Since then, you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you will appear with him in glory. Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature: sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. Because of these, the wrath of God is coming. You used to walk in these ways, in the life that you once lived. But now, you must also get rid yourself of all such things as these: anger, rage, malice, slander, and filthy language from your lips. We're going to skip a couple of verses. We're going to skip to verse 12. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any one of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. This is the word of God. Now, if we went a couple of verses back, I highlighted it for you guys. The main thing that Paul wants to tell us is right here. He says, do this. Okay? And then after that, all the negative things right here, right? These things are going to go away. And the positive things that all of us want: compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, patience, these things are going to come. But first, what must you do? You must set your mind. So your mind and your heart, you got to set it on what? Not the earthly things, but on heavenly things. So I want you guys to think. Most of your time, if you put a percentage, how many of you guys would think of percentage-wise the level of your heart and your mind is on heavenly things? And how much percent of it is on earthly things? Now, I'm not trying to make you guys feel bad or guilty, but I just want you to kind of think about that. How much of my time, how much of my heart is actually set on things above? So hopefully, for me personally, I don't think it's above a lot of times. I would say 99.9% of the time, it's on earthly things. But I'm hoping that through this series, through this couple of next weeks, that we can hopefully do this better. Okay, now, first, we're going to talk about why this is incredibly difficult for us, and why I think our culture actually trains us not to actually things on the things above, and actually but encourages us to actually keep our mind here. Okay, the first thing. If you actually think of linguistics itself, a lot of the things that we, as far as when we talk about like earthly things, it's very positive. Whereas when we talk about things of heaven, it's very negative. Okay, I'll give you a couple of examples of this. First example is someone who's down to earth. Is that a positive or a negative trait? Normally, we think that's a very positive thing. Someone who's very down to earth. They're very realistic. They're very practical. Okay? What's another one? Someone who's very grounded. He or she is grounded. Is that a positive thing or a negative thing? Again, it's a very positive trait. Now, I'm going to give you guys the terms we use for kind of somebody who's above, okay? How about somebody who's, their heads are in the clouds? Is that a positive thing or a negative thing? Normally we're saying what? They're like wandering off, They're not thinking of reality. They're not practical. They're somewhere off into space. So again, we see language-wise, we already have some connotations. People who are grounded, people who are here, they care about what's going on here. But people, if you put your mind above, if your head is in space, then you're not thinking about the practical things of life. There's a lot of environmentalists, and I think they make a pretty honest, fair assessment, but they actually say Christians are the worst when it comes to environment. You guys know why? Because they say Christians, religious people, they go, there's heaven. Okay, so who cares about the pollution or ozone layer, whatever, all that stuff? Like, who cares? We're going to leave this place anyways. We're going to go to heaven anyways. What's the point of taking care of this earth? Okay, God's going to destroy this earth anyways. Later on, by the way, we're going to see how that's not very biblical. Okay, but that's how a lot of people think. And so they go, oh, trash. I don't need to recycle. I don't care. Okay, so there's people who say, no. Stop thinking about heaven. Okay, you got to focus on what's here now. You got to be practical. And that's why, again, we use terms like you're grounded. Okay? Don't put your head above the clouds. There was a song a couple of years ago by John Lennon, and he actually wrote a song about this. Okay? He said this. Imagine there's no heaven. Imagine, okay, maybe some of you are singing the song, right? Imagine, okay. Imagine all the people living for today. Why? Because all those religious people, all those Christians, they're always saying, oh, over there, over there, over there. So they're not responsible. They don't care about their family members. They don't do what's right here. They don't fight for justice. Okay? What they do is they're like, once we get to heaven, things will be okay. Things will get better. And so instead of, again, being grounded, being down to earth, their heads are above the clouds. Okay? So again, we have a pretty negative view of people who are, oh, heaven, 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 and I'm going to go to heaven and this kind of thing. So again, we see that within our culture. And I think some of us, and most of us, I think, are influenced to that degree. And I think that's why a lot of us, we go, I don't want to sound like I'm a fanatic. Okay? I want to kind of have a balanced view. But it's very interesting, because Paul doesn't say that. Paul doesn't say, okay, think about the heavenly stuff just a little bit. Just a little bit of your heart, or just a little bit of your mind. And the rest of the stuff, do the earthly thing. Okay? He actually says, let me skip all this. So this is what a lot of people, this is usually what people say. You're so heavenly minded, you're no earthly good. Right? You're so heavenly minded, your mind is in heaven, you're not doing any good for the earth. But what Paul's going to actually tell us is this. He's going to reverse it. He says, you're so heavenly minded, therefore, you're also earthly good. Okay? And I think that's the problem that we have as Christians. Okay? Are there Christians or are there religious people that take this to an extreme? Absolutely. Absolutely. But he actually tells us, okay? So there's two extremes. One extreme says, I only care about heaven. I don't care about anybody on the earth. And a lot of us, I think we're all more on this side probably. Our culture has taught us, there's no heaven. Only worry about this. And Paul actually says both of these extremes are wrong. If anything, what we need to do is we become so heavenly minded that what we do on this earth matters as well. Does that make sense? So when this happens well, this will happen as well. But a lot of times, this is not good because we're not focusing enough on heaven. And that's what Paul's going to basically say. Okay? So I want you guys to try to see, where are you on the spectrum? Are you on the spectrum of heaven, 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 and so you're not responsible for things that you need to do here? Or are you so like here, that you're chasing after, kind of like what we talked about last series. You're chasing after this, chasing this, that you forget about heaven. You forget your main destination. So where are you? And today we're going to, hopefully, whether you're on this spectrum or this spectrum, we're going to bring you closer into the middle. and what I think is a biblical balance. Okay? You are so heavenly minded, so therefore, you are going to become level. And you are going to make a great, huge impact in this world. I'll give you an example of this. C.S. Lewis, he said this: if you read history, you will find that Christians who did the most for the present world, just for those, wait, so one more time. If you read history, you will find that Christians who did the most for the present world were just those who thought most of the next heaven. Okay, next, which is heaven. Okay, so C.S. Lewis is saying the people who did the most on this earth, they're always thinking about heaven. And I'll connect the two later for you guys. Next, the apostles, right? They spread Christianity. They were willing to die. They did great things. The men who built up the Middle Ages, the English evangelicals who abolished the slave trade. Do you guys know that? I know most of us, we don't know British history because we're not British. But do you guys know that it was Christians who actually went against the slave trade and abolished slave trade? It was Christians. Okay, William Wilberforce. There's a very good movie, by the way, if you guys want to watch a movie. Okay, anyway, you should watch it. Anyway, who abolished the slave trade. All left their mark on earth. They were able to do good on earth. Why? Precisely because their minds were occupied with heaven. Because they were thinking of heaven, they said, we got to make a difference here. Again, that's the balance that we're trying to get. It is since Christians have largely ceased to think of the other world that they have become so ineffective in this. Okay, so he's basically saying, he's criticizing the Christians and saying, the reason why we're not making an impact in this world is because we're not thinking about heaven enough. Okay, again, we'll get to it. Aim at heaven, and you will get the earth thrown in. Basically, if you focus rightly on heaven, then you will make difference here. But you aim at earth, and you will get nothing. Okay? So, how is this going to happen? Because Paul's saying, and C.S. Lewis is saying, we're not focusing on heaven enough. Okay? How is it that when we focus actually on heaven, we're actually able to help out more? Okay, I'll give you an example of this. Paul says, again, set your minds on things above, and when you do those things, okay, there's going to be differences in our lives here. Okay, I'll give you, so he talked about different, sins of the flesh. Okay, I go to me, okay? So he talks about how there's sexual immorality and anger and malice, and then when you actually start focusing on heaven, there's going to be actually more kindness and compassion and humility. Okay, I'm going to give you an example of this. In about 100 years after Jesus died, or after his ministry, he died and resurrected, in the Roman Empire, there were two plagues that happened. One plague, I think it was AD 165, and the second plague was 200 something, okay, in that time. There were crazy plagues that really, really decimated most of Roman Empire. Okay, it was so much so that some scholars, they believe, historical scholars, they say it's up to 50% of the whole population of Rome that actually died during these plagues. And what they realized, okay, what the doctors of that time started to realize was, they realized this virus came through contact. So let's say if somebody has this virus, I go next to this person, or if I touch this person, I'm also going to get this virus as well. Okay? So what did all the doctors, what did all the well-known, the educated, the rich people do? They fled. They fled. Okay? And why do you flee? Why did they flee? Because they don't want to die. Okay? Why is that? Because they have no assurance whatsoever that there's going to be an afterlife. They have no assurance that there's something above. Okay? So, my life is all I have here. And so why am I going to help somebody else when I'm going to risk myself and die? So, even the doctors, the educated, they all fled and they all went away. Really interesting. Okay? When people were leaving, there were some people who were running into the city. Do you know who it was? There were these crazy group of people called Christians. Okay, when everybody was running out and running away from these people, Christians actually went into the castle or into these kingdoms, into these towns. Okay? And they actually helped people. And a lot of Christians actually died with them. But historians actually tell us from 165 to 200, Christianity went from 5% or 6% of the population of Roman Empire to close to 50%. Okay, why is that? Because these Christians, okay, when everybody was running out, Christians were running in, and Christians were actually being compassionate to people. But why is that? Is it because Christians are just better people? No, absolutely not. Is it because Christians are good people and these people are bad? No. What was the difference? The difference was, for the non-believers, for the non-Christians, again, they had nothing to hope for. All they had was this life. And so they didn't care, when it came down to it, about helping others, if it affected them negatively. Does that make sense? But the Christians, they ran in and they stayed and they sacrificed. Why? Because they were thinking on things above. What they were thinking was, I'm going to help out, and I might die. However, there's more to life than just this earth. I know for sure that there's an afterlife. That I have assurance of life. That this is not just going to end, but it's going to continue to last. And so when those people actually set their minds on heaven, they were able to actually do good on the earth. And so this is what C.S. Lewis is saying, and this is what Paul is talking about as well. He's actually saying, if you set your mind above, if you set your heart above, you're able to, it gives you the power and the motivation to actually do good things on this earth. Why? Because it makes an eternal difference. However, if you don't believe that, there is no motivation. Now, I'm not saying that only Christians do good things. No, I'm not saying that. And then obviously all the people who ran away, they're all bad people. I'm not saying that. I'm sure there were Christians who fled as well. Okay? And I'm sure there might be some people who are not Christians that help. Okay? I'm not saying that. But I'm saying as Christians, it makes sense for you to help out and put yourself in danger. But these other people, again, it makes sense. All they have is this life. I have to preserve this life. I have to enjoy this life. Why give? Why be gracious? Why help other people when I gotta live here? I have nothing else. So let's go back to John Lennon. John Lennon says, imagine if there was no heaven. Okay, John Lennon, we don't have to imagine. Okay, we don't have to imagine. Why? Because we already saw what that did. We saw that if there is no heaven, people don't start helping people more. People actually live more selfishly. And that's what Paul, and that's what C.S. Lewis is talking about here. He's saying, do you understand? The reason why our hearts are so evil is not because we're thinking of heaven, 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 heaven. It's because we're not thinking of heaven enough. We think this is all I got. If this is all you got, then you're going to hold on tightly. And you're never going to let go. You're never going to be compassionate. You're going to hoard money. You're going to hoard resources. You're never going to let go. Why? Because this is all you got. Why give it up? If there is no God afterwards, if there is no judgment afterwards, if there's no eternity afterwards, who cares? Okay? If the ship is going down, who cares? If you're hugging somebody when you're going down, or if you're mugging somebody when you're going down, who cares? There's no consequence anyway. But again, for Christians, again, C.S. Lewis says, we need to look at heaven. Do you want to do great good on this earth? Do you want to make an impact on this earth? You got to look at heaven. You got to have a big view of what God is doing and what God has prepared for you. And that this life is not the end. So again, that's a great example of how, again, just because you're heavenly minded, that doesn't mean that you're earthly good. If anything, we got to focus more on heaven. And when we know where we're going to be, when we know our destination, then there's going to be a difference that we can make on this earth. So again, I want you to think about that. Okay? Is it possible that in my life, I'm not very compassionate? Okay? Because all I'm thinking about is here, building my kingdom here, doing my stuff here. Is it possible that I'm selfish, I'm angry because people are getting in my way? But what if, again, just like what Paul says, set your mind on things above. Okay? Set your heart on things above. There's more to life than here. What would happen in our life if we actually started to live that way? There's a very difference, right? Big difference. If you know, for example, let's say you're a homeless person. You have one piece of bread. Are you going to share it with another homeless person? No. You have nothing coming in. I got to hold really, really tight onto this thing. This is all I got left. So what if you get a phone call saying, hey, we actually found out that a rich uncle of yours have left inheritance in your name, and now you have coming $1 billion. It's my bread. Don't take my bread. Is that going to be your attitude? No, you're bread for you, throwing out bread. Why? Because you realize what you have, what's coming in store for you. Okay? We gotta, do you see how where our mind is, where our attitude is, where our focus is, it's gonna determine our action. A lot of times, because we're so focused on, okay, what do I gotta have? Okay, this is all I have here. That's all I got. I gotta stay grounded. There's a lot of these negative traits. Can you go to the Bible verse that we were on in the beginning? I thought I put it in, but I didn't. So again, let's go back to the Bible verse. Yeah. So again, it says here, again, a lot of these things coming out here if you think about it. Again, all of these things, again, these are your earthly nature. All you're thinking about is here, here, here. You under the earth, okay, under the sun. So all the things that are coming out is this: sexual immorality, purity, evil desire, lust, okay, anger, rage, malice, slander, filthy language. Again, none of us, we wake up in the morning and we say, how can I be more angry? How can I say more filthy things today? None of us. And yet, because our hearts, our minds are only focused on here, that's why these things are coming out. And instead, Paul tells us, no. Okay, if you realize you're God's chosen people, that God has prepared a place for you, and it makes all the difference in the world. Then again, you realize, okay, God has a place for me. God has been gracious to me. God has been compassionate to me. Now, I could be compassionate with other people. Not because it just comes out automatically, but because God has been compassionate to me. So I could be compassionate to other people. God has been kind to me, so therefore, I could be kind to others as well. Now, this is incredibly difficult. Okay, incredibly difficult. Okay, we live in a society where it encourages us, no, this is all you got. Live for here. Nothing else matters. Don't go above the heavens. Don't put your head above the clouds. You're a fanatical if you do that. Stay here, stay here, stay here. Again, this is very, very, very difficult. That's why Paul tells us, okay, he says this. That's why you must, what does it say? Put to death. It doesn't say negotiate. It doesn't say on Sabbath, think about heaven, and the rest of the week, you do whatever you want, or control your desires. No, it says, put it to death. Now, I hope none of you guys have ever killed something before. Okay? And I hope you guys have never seen someone kill something else before. Okay? When I was in the Philippines, No, not in Philippines. It was in India. I'm sure I saw it in the Philippines as well, but it was in India. Okay, you go to the market and you see a lot of animals, especially chickens, being killed. Okay, and again, what does it require? When you see death, when you put to death, again, we use this language like metaphorically. Oh yeah, put to death. But again, what does that require? That requires intentionality. Okay, yourself is not just gonna die just because, oh, maybe one day I'll wish upon that it's gonna die. No, what's gonna happen? You got to be very, very intentional. And what happens when you have to kill something? It's very, very difficult. Now, let me just end with this. I know there's going to be some of you in here who read something like this and you go, all right, this week, I'm going to try real hard. I'm going to try real hard this week to kill my earthly nature. I'm going to try real hard to set my heart on things above. But guess what? I want you guys to try it. But guess what's going to happen? You're going to forget it by the time you eat potluck today. Okay, why? Because the problem is, it's not just about our will. It's not just about trying or not trying. A lot of us, we have tried. Especially for some of you guys who have been Christians for a long time, you've been trying all your life. And you've been failing. But do you know why you continue to fail? And do you know why I continue to fail? It's because my heart is not on heaven. My heart is continuing to want earthly things. So if our heart is on earthly things, what is it going to seek? It's going to seek earthly things. Again, this is why it's going to be very important. It says, put to death. Now, this is not something we have to understand, something that we can just do. Okay? Colossians chapter 1 and Colossians chapter 2, we don't have time to go over it, but Colossians chapter 1 and 2 talks about this idea of the gospel. And this whole right here, this is all of the gospel right here. Okay? And the concept is, you keep trying and you keep trying and you keep trying, but it's never enough. It's never enough. And some of you Christians in here, all your life you've been just trying and trying and trying. But you have to understand, it's not about you trying, it's about you realizing you have to, again, die with Jesus. You have to understand that you cannot change your heart, no matter how much you try. Even though you want to set your minds on things above, your heart doesn't desire that. And God knows that. And that's why God comes down to die for us instead. Because it requires His death for us to die with Him as well. For our hearts to change, it's not going to just happen by choice. It's going to happen when we submit our will to God and say, God, I don't desire godly things. I don't desire heavenly things. I can't change this. I continue to want earthly things. Even though I know sin is bad because I don't desire this thing. I don't wake up in the morning and go, sin, sin, sin. And yet, I continue to end of my life, I see myself full of sin. And my hands are so dirty and bloody. And so Jesus comes and says, I will change your heart. That's why, again, you must die with Jesus. And you must come to life with Jesus as well. And that's why in Christianity, acceptance of Jesus is very important. It's not just try harder. It's not look at heaven more. It's to realize Jesus is the only one who can change our heart. And it's to really rely on Him. God, change my heart. And to realize the beauty of what God is doing for us. That even though we have rejected Him, even though we have failed Him, He continues to come and accept us. And when we start doing that, then our hearts change. Okay? When you see something beautiful, that's when it changes. So we need to see the beauty of Christ. And once that happens, and we go, I want to see that Jesus. I'm going to be with that Jesus. And when this happens, then again, we will make an impact on this earth as well. Where are you in your walk with God? Are you trying and trying and trying? Are you sick of your sin? Are you sick of your addictions that you have? Okay, come to Jesus. Lay your heart in front of Jesus. Be honest with him and say, I can't do this. If I want to accept you, you change my heart. We're going to go into time of reflection. I pray that that will be your